A letter from your future self arrives in your hands today. This is the core of a radical idea shaking the foundations of science, called retrocausality. It is the concept that the future can reach back and change the past. This is not a fantasy. It is a serious theory debated by physicists and philosophers right now, and it threatens to completely rewrite the rules of reality, technology, and how we live our lives. By the end of this exploration, you will understand how your tomorrow might already be shaping your yesterday. We will uncover how particles might communicate backwards through time and ask if our choices are ever truly our own. What does your intuition tell you about the direction of time? Physics has a secret. For all our clocks and calendars, the fundamental laws governing the universe do not actually care which way time flows. The equations of quantum mechanics work just as well running forward as they do running backward. This mathematical symmetry is the crack in the door through which retrocausality enters. It suggests that influence might not be a one-way street from past to future, but a two-way conversation. To understand this, we need to step into the bizarre world of quantum possibilities. Here, a particle does not have a definite location or state until it is observed. It exists as a cloud of probabilities, a shimmer of potential. Some interpretations of this strangeness propose a radical solution, that the act of observation in the present is not the beginning of the story, but the middle. Imagine throwing a stone into a pond. Ripples expand outward in all directions, defining the future of the water's surface. Now, picture those ripples converging from the edges of the pond back to the point where the stone landed. This backward-in-time convergence is a key idea in interpretations like the transactional interpretation. It proposes that when a particle is measured, it sends an offer wave forward in time, and a confirmation wave backward from the future measurement event, completing the transaction. It is a handshake across time. Another view, the two-state vector formalism, describes a particle with not one, but two waves defining it, one propagating from the past and one from the future, meeting in the present to define what we see. These are not just philosophical musings, they are testable frameworks. Experiments like the quantum delayed choice experiment provide tantalizing hints. In this setup, a photon is given a choice to act like a particle or a wave, but that choice is made by an experimenter after the photon has already begun its journey. Astonishingly, the photon's behavior seems to adjust based on that future decision. It is as if the particle knows what is coming and arranges its past accordingly. This is not magic, it is the universe operating with a rulebook where cause and effect can be a loop, not a line. The ripples are not just moving outward, they are also whispering back to the source, telling it how to begin. This handshake across time forces us to confront a profound and unsettling question. If the future is whispering back, shaping the events that lead to its own existence, where does that leave our cherished notion of free will? Are our choices truly ours, or are we simply following a script written by a tomorrow that already exists? This is the philosophical earthquake at the heart of retrocausality. It seems to paint a picture of a universe locked in a predestined loop, a cosmic story where the ending is already known and every action merely fulfills a preordained path. Imagine you receive that promotion you have been working toward for years. In a retrocausal world, one could argue the future fact of your success reached back and influenced all your past decisions, the late nights, the extra projects, the moments of perseverance. Did you choose those actions, or were they gently nudged into place by the promotion that was always going to happen? This feels like destiny wearing the mask of choice. It suggests a self-consistent timeline, a universe that neatly ties up all loose ends to ensure what happens is what always had to happen. Your path was fixed, and your sense of making decisions is just an illusion. The experience of reading a book for the first time, even though every word was already printed. Yet there is another, more liberating way to see this loop. Perhaps free will is not about creating a future from nothing, but about participating in a dialogue with it. Think of it like a sculptor and a block of marble. The final statue exists as a potential within the stone. The sculptor's choices, every chip of the chisel, are real and meaningful, but they are also in conversation with that emerging form. The future statue guides the hand, and the hand reveals the statue. In this view, your will is not erased, it is essential. Your choices are the mechanism through which a possible future becomes the actual past. The promotion did not cause your hard work. Your hard work and the future promotion are two aspects of a single, consistent story. You are both the author and the character, writing the tale as you live it, with the final chapter somehow ensuring the early chapters make sense. This does not resolve the tension, it reframes it. It asks us to consider if freedom is about absolute, uncaused choice, or about being a genuine participant in a story that is coherent across time. The universe may not allow contradictions, a timeline where you get the promotion without the work, but within that consistency, your agency is the very engine of reality. So, the next time you make a difficult decision, wonder this: are you listening for a whisper from a future that is counting on you to choose it? This cosmic dialogue between choice and destiny is a story humanity has been telling itself for centuries, long before physicists put equations to it. Our films, our novels, and our television shows have been rehearsing the paradoxes of retrocausality, preparing our collective imagination for a reality where time is not a straight line. Think of the film Arrival, where a linguist learns an alien language that rewires her perception of time itself. She does not see her life as a sequence, but as a whole, where the joy of a future daughter and the grief of her loss exist simultaneously. The story is a profound meditation on retrocausality, not of particles but of meaning. Her future knowledge irrevocably shapes her past decisions, yet she chooses that future with open eyes, embracing the entire beautiful, painful loop. It is a narrative that gets the emotional truth of the concept stunningly right, the weight of knowing and still choosing. Then there is the German series Dark, a masterpiece of temporal entanglement where cause and effect are so knotted they become a single, inescapable knot. Characters discover they are their own ancestors, their actions in the past directly creating the future that created them. It portrays time as a self-consistent, closed loop with a tragic, deterministic feel, highlighting the claustrophobia that can come with the idea that nothing can truly be changed. On the other end of the spectrum, a film like Tenet takes the concept and runs with it as a visceral, action-driven mechanic. Objects and people moving backward through entropy, where a bullet flies back into a gun and a shattered window unshatters. While the physics is played with extreme creative license, it visually trains us to think in non-linear terms, to accept that an effect can literally precede its cause on screen. These stories serve a crucial purpose. They are playgrounds for the mind, allowing us to safely explore the philosophical and emotional consequences of a retrocausal universe. They ask us, if you knew your entire future, would you change your path, or would you, like the linguist in Arrival, walk it anyway for the love contained within it? Often, these narratives get one thing profoundly correct: the feeling that time is not a river carrying us forward, but a landscape we are standing upon where every point is equally real. Where they sometimes diverge from the science is in the mechanism. Physics suggests this backward influence is subtle, woven into the fabric of probability at the quantum level, not typically allowing for macroscopic time travel with running and shouting. Yet, by getting the feeling right, these stories perform a vital function. They stretch our intuition, making the once unthinkable feel familiar and discussable. They turn abstract equations into human dilemmas about love, fate, and sacrifice. So when a physicist today speaks of waves from the future, a part of our culture is already nodding along because we have seen that story before. We have felt its weight in a darkened theater, and that emotional preparation may be just as important as any laboratory experiment in readying us for the next revolution in understanding. The real question is not whether the future whispers, but what if we could learn to shout back? Temporal communication, sending a deliberate message into the past, moves us from philosophy into the realm of hypothetical engineering. The tools for this staggering feat are not wrenches and wires, but the most extreme concepts in theoretical physics. One proposed method leverages a phenomenon we already know, quantum entanglement, but stretches it across time instead of space. In standard entanglement, two particles become linked so that measuring one instantly determines the state of the other, no matter the distance. For temporal communication, imagine creating an entangled pair, then holding one particle steady while sending its twin on a near-light-speed journey. Due to time dilation from relativity, the traveling particle experiences less time. If you then measure the stationary particle, its state could, in theory, be influenced by the future measurement of its still traveling twin. You would be reading a signal sent from your own future, a note scribbled in the language of quantum states. Another wild concept is the tachyonic antitelephone, a device that relies on hypothetical particles called tachyons that always travel faster than light. According to some equations, if such particles existed, they could be used to send messages backward in time. You would compose your message, encode it on a tachyon beam, and fire it. From the perspective of a receiver in the past, that message would appear to arrive before you even sent it. Then there are the cosmic shortcuts, wormholes, theoretical tunnels through space-time. If a wormhole could be created, stabilized, and one mouth of it were taken on a high-speed journey, time dilation would cause the two ends to become desynchronized. You could step into the moving mouth and emerge from the stationary one in its past. For sending pure information, you would just need to send a signal through this tunnel. Black holes, with their intense gravity warping time to a standstill at the event horizon, might also be manipulated into similar temporal gateways, though the physics here is even more forbidding. The energy required for any of these schemes is almost beyond comprehension. Stabilizing a wormhole, for instance, is thought to require a form of matter with negative energy density, something we have never seen in bulk. The power needed might exceed the total output of a star, and then there is the paradox problem. Sending a clear message to the past invites catastrophic logical inconsistencies. What if you warned your past self of a disaster, preventing it, thus removing the reason to send the warning in the first place? This is the famous grandfather paradox. Physics suggests the universe might enforce consistency through bizarre means, perhaps allowing only messages that do not create contradictions, or branching reality into parallel timelines to absorb the change. So the act of sending a message might not change your own past, but spin off a new one where the message was always received. The engineering is staggering, the energy requirements are astronomical, and the logical pitfalls are deep. Yet the mere possibility that the laws of physics might not outright forbid a temporal post office reshapes our entire conception of reality. But the most elegant and troubling challenge to our everyday logic is the bootstrap paradox. This is the riddle of something that exists without ever being created. Think of a time traveler who goes back to meet a young Beethoven and hands him a complete, bound volume of his own future symphonies. The young composer studies them, is inspired, and spends his life copying them out note for note, eventually publishing them under his own name. Centuries later, the time traveler finds this published score in a library, takes it back in time, and gives it to the child Beethoven. So, where did the music originally come from? It was not composed by Beethoven in the traditional sense. He merely transcribed what he was given. And it was not composed by the time traveler who simply found it in a library. The symphony exists in a perfect, closed loop with no point of origin. It is information or even a physical object that is its own cause. The bootstrap paradox asks a devastating question about existence itself. If nothing in the loop was ever originally created, does it have any less reality? The notes are on the page, the music fills concert halls, the influence is undeniable, yet its history is a circle with no beginning. This extends far beyond sheet music. Imagine a scientist who receives a blueprint from the future, a design for a revolutionary engine. She builds it exactly as specified, and it works perfectly. The design is then published, becomes famous, and eventually a copy is sent back to her younger self. Who invented the engine? The answer is no one, and everyone in the loop simultaneously. The object bootstraps itself into reality, defying our linear notion that everything must have a starting point. This paradox cuts to the heart of creativity and discovery. It suggests that in a retrocausal universe, some ideas might not be invented, but simply received from a future that itself received them from the past. It turns the history of innovation into a tapestry of loops rather than a straight line of progress. The implications are dizzying. If a bootstrap loop is stable, then the object or information within it is timeless. It simply is. Its existence is guaranteed by its own consistency. This forces us to reconsider what we mean by origin. We think of creation as a moment, a spark in the void. But the bootstrap paradox presents creation as a relationship, a self-sustaining pattern woven into the fabric of time. The music is no less beautiful, the engine no less powerful for having no author. Their reality is defined not by a birth certificate, but by their enduring presence in the loop. So the next great masterpiece or groundbreaking invention might not await discovery in some unknown frontier, but could already be circulating in a temporal eddy, waiting for the right moment to step into the loop and become part of its own eternal story. That self-bootstrapping symphony leads directly to the most famous and violent contradiction in all of time travel, the grandfather paradox. The thought experiment is brutally simple. You build a time machine, journey into the past, and find your own grandfather before he has children. You then prevent him from ever meeting your grandmother. Without that meeting, your parent is never born, and therefore you are never born. But if you were never born, you could not have built the time machine, traveled back, or interfered with your grandparents. So your grandfather lives, meets your grandmother, and you are born after all, which allows you to go back and stop him. The logic spins in an impossible, dizzying loop of creation and erasure. It is the ultimate argument against changing the past, a stark warning that tampering with history unravels the very fabric of reality. Yet, physicists and philosophers do not see this as a conversation ender, but as a puzzle demanding a solution. Their proposed answers reveal profoundly different visions of how the cosmos might handle such a violation. The first and perhaps most elegant solution is the Novikov self-consistency principle, named after the Russian physicist Igor Novikov. It states quite simply that the universe does not allow paradoxes. If time travel to the past is possible, then anything a traveler does there must already be a part of established history. Your journey back is not an intrusion but an event that always happened. In this view, you cannot kill your grandfather because you did not kill your grandfather. The universe conspires through a near-infinite series of subtle coincidences and failed attempts to ensure consistency. You might travel back with the intent to change things, but your gun jams, or you get lost, or at the crucial moment, you simply cannot bring yourself to pull the trigger. Every action you take weaves seamlessly into the tapestry of what already was. Your trip back did not change history, it was history. This principle turns time into a single, immutable story where free will is an illusion within the loop, and the feeling of making a choice is just the experience of living out a page that was always written. A radically different answer comes from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Here, every possible outcome of every quantum event actually happens, but in a newly branching parallel universe. Apply this to time travel and the paradox vanishes. You go back and successfully prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. At the moment of that change, the timeline does not unravel, it simply splits. You have created a new branch of reality, a parallel universe where you were never born, but you, the time traveler, originated from the original branch. That universe, with your history intact, continues on unchanged. You are now a visitor or perhaps a permanent resident in a world where you have no origin. This solution preserves free will and allows for genuine change, but at the cost of infinite duplication. Every decision by every time traveler would spawn new universes, a fractal explosion of alternate realities. You could never return to the exact world you left, only to one indistinguishable from it. Your act does not erase you, it exiles you. So, which solution feels more plausible? The self-consistency principle is beautifully tidy, enforcing a single, coherent reality, but it feels deterministic, almost claustrophobic. The many worlds interpretation is liberating for the traveler, but makes the cosmos wildly extravagant, constantly forking into endless copies. Interestingly, both might be pointing toward a deeper truth about causality itself. Perhaps influence from the future is not about rewriting a single timeline, but about selecting or strengthening one thread in a vast, pre-existing tapestry of possibilities. Your journey back might not create a new thread, but simply make one thread the dominant, experienced reality. The grandfather paradox forces us to choose what kind of universe we believe we live in, one of elegant, unbreakable consistency or one of boundless, branching potential. And that choice in itself may be the most timeless question of all. The possibility of a self-consistent universe or branching timelines is not just a physics problem, it is a moral one. If a channel to the past ever opens, the first message sent will not be a physics equation, it will be a warning. A single line of text, a date, a location, a name. The ethical weight of that potential is almost unbearable. Do we have a moral duty to prevent suffering if we can? The instinct screams yes. Send the warning about the earthquake, the tsunami, the pandemic, the assassination. Save those lives, yet this simple act of compassion unravels into a thicket of impossible questions. Who chooses which tragedies to prevent? Is it ethical to save one city from a natural disaster but not another, simply because we have more data on one? We become arbiters of fate on a global scale, our selective benevolence writing and rewriting history. And what of the unintended consequences? Preventing a disaster might also prevent the social reforms, technological advances, or collective unity that arose in its aftermath. A terrible event can catalyze a better world. By erasing the cause, do we inadvertently erase that better future? We will be acting with the limited knowledge of our present, blind to the cascading effects our well-intentioned edit might have a century later. Then there is the preservation argument. Some might argue the timeline itself has a right to integrity, that the past is a finished tapestry and pulling a single thread, even a painful one, risks unraveling the entire human story. Our identity is built upon our shared history, scars and all. To sanitize the past is to fundamentally alter who we are. This creates a bizarre moral obligation across time. Does a person in the 21st century have a responsibility to people in the 19th? If you can prevent the suffering of someone long dead, are they, in a very real sense, not dead to you? Your action makes them a contemporary, a life you can touch. This collapses the distance of decades into an immediate ethical demand. It transforms history from a record into a living community for which we are suddenly responsible. The most profound dilemma might be one of humility. Every warning sent, every disaster averted, makes the present that sent the warning possible. This creates a dangerous feedback loop of self-justification. Our timeline, with all its flaws, becomes the corrected one, and we become the architects of our own necessity. Would we ever stop? The power to edit the past is the ultimate temptation, promising a perfect world but risking the very soul of our imperfect, authentic journey. So before we ever build that temporal transmitter, we must ask ourselves not just if we can, but who we become when we do. Perhaps the most intimate evidence of retrocausality is not in a lab but in our own mind. We have all felt that uncanny whisper, the sudden certainty that feels like a memory of something that has not happened yet. This is the domain of retrocausal psychology, the idea that our consciousness might be a receiver faintly picking up signals from our own future. Take the experience of déjà vu, that strange, fleeting conviction that you have lived this exact moment before. Conventional explanations often point to a minor neurological glitch, a momentary delay in processing that makes the present feel like a past memory. But what if the sensation is not a misfire, but a brief, imperfect alignment, a glimpse of a future moment echoing backward, creating a sense of familiarity before the event itself unfolds? It is as if the timeline briefly overlaps with itself, and you stand in the echo of what is to come. Then there are precognitive dreams, those startlingly vivid visions that later play out in waking life with unsettling accuracy. While many such dreams are likely coincidences or the brain's pattern-matching engine working overtime, the sheer volume of anecdotal reports gives pause. Could some of these be more than chance? In a retrocausal framework, a highly emotional or significant future event might cast a shadow backward through time, imprinting itself on the sleeping mind as a symbolic or literal preview. Your brain, in the quiet state of sleep, might be more receptive to these subtle ripples from tomorrow. This leads to the phenomenon of presentiment, which has actually been studied under laboratory conditions. Researchers have hooked participants up to sensors measuring skin conductance, heart rate, and brain activity. They then showed them a series of images, most of them calm and neutral, but a few randomly interspersed with violent or shocking content. The data revealed something extraordinary. Participants' physiological systems began reacting to the disturbing images a few seconds before they were randomly selected and displayed on the screen. Their bodies were preparing for the emotional shock before the cause even existed in their present. It was as if their unconscious was reading a footnote from the immediate future. These studies, while controversial and requiring replication, suggest our nervous system might operate on a slight delay, processing reality not as a single instant, but as a brief window that includes information from what we conventionally call the future. So what does this mean for our daily experience of intuition? That gut feeling, the sudden knowing that you should take a different route home or call a friend, might be the conscious tip of a much deeper, non-linear process. A brain attuned to a two-way flow of time would not perceive the future as empty space, but as a landscape of potentials, some of which are more probable or emotionally charged than others. These strong potentials might bleed into the present not as clear visions, but as somatic sensations, a tightening in the chest, a surge of energy, or a profound sense of unease. We dismiss these as hunches, but they could be our psyche's way of translating a future memory into a present moment nudge. Think of it like hearing a distant melody. You cannot make out the tune or the lyrics, but you feel its emotional tone, its rhythm. Your future is broadcasting a faint signal, and your intuition is the static-filled receiver. This reframes free will yet again. Your choices are not made in a vacuum of the present, but in a rich field of information that includes the probable consequences of those very choices. You are not a puppet of fate, but a participant in a continuous dialogue with your own timeline, guided by feelings that are quite literally echoes of what is to come. The next time you have a powerful, unexplainable gut feeling, pause for a moment. That might not just be your past experience talking. It could be a memory from a future that is hoping you will listen. These whispers from the future are now being actively hunted in laboratories around the world. While a full-blown time machine remains in the realm of theory, ingenious experiments are probing the edges of causality, searching for the faint but measurable signature of retrocausal influence. The most compelling of these often occur in the quantum realm, where the rules are already strange. Take the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment, a setup that feels like a magic trick played on reality itself. In this experiment, a single photon is sent toward a screen through a special setup that gives it two possible paths, like two slits. If you do not check which path it took, the photon behaves like a wave, interfering with itself and creating a pattern. If you do check, it snaps into being a particle and the pattern vanishes. The quantum eraser adds a bizarre twist. Scientists can make that choice of whether to check the path after the photon has already hit the detector. Astonishingly, the data suggests the photon's behavior, whether it acted as a wave or a particle, is retroactively determined by that future choice. It is as if the photon's past is not fixed until the experimenter in the present makes a decision. The methodology is precise, involving beam splitters, detectors, and careful data correlation. But the implication is staggering. The present moment seems to reach back and edit the history of a particle that has already completed its journey. This is not time travel in the science fiction sense, but it is a clear signal that at the quantum level, the arrow of time has a very fuzzy tip. Alongside these quantum puzzles, research into presentiment and physiological precognition continues to push into the biological domain. As mentioned earlier, these studies monitor subtle bodily signals like skin conductance and heart rate variability. The protocol is rigorous. Participants sit before a blank screen while sensors record their baseline state. A computer then randomly selects with impeccable timing an image to display which could be calm or emotionally charged. The consistent, though controversial, finding is that the body begins to react to the shocking images before the random selection is made, before any sensory information could possibly arrive. The methodology aims to rule out chance, expectation, or sensory cues, isolating a pure precognitive response. What would a positive, repeatable result in these labs actually mean for engineering? It would be the first concrete blueprint. If we can reliably measure an effect, we can begin to understand its mechanism. A confirmed retrocausal signal in a quantum system could point toward new principles for information processing, perhaps leading to quantum computers that solve problems by leveraging answers from their own computational future. A validated biological presentiment effect could revolutionize neuroscience, suggesting our brains are hardware already capable of non-linear perception, waiting for us to learn its operating system. The controversy within the scientific community is fierce and healthy. Skeptics rightly point to the need for flawless methodology, larger sample sizes, and replication by independent labs. The history of science is littered with extraordinary claims that evaporated under scrutiny. Yet this skepticism is not a dismissal. It is the essential process of stress testing a radical idea. Each failed replication teaches us something, and each intriguing positive result adds another data point to a growing, perplexing map. These prototypes, whether of photons or physiology, are not yet devices. They are flickering indicators on a dashboard we are only just learning to read. They tell us that the universe's clock may have more than one hand, and if we learn to tell time by it, the future of technology will look nothing like the past. That faint signal from the future, once decoded, would become the most valuable commodity in human history. We are on the brink of a new economic paradigm, one built not on predicting the future but on receiving its bulletins. Welcome to the retrocausal economy, a marketplace where yesterday's investments are guided by tomorrow's confirmed data. The entire concept of speculation would undergo a radical transformation. Today, a trader buys a stock based on analysis, rumor, and gut feeling, gambling on an uncertain outcome. In a retrocausal market, that same trader might receive a verified data packet from 24 hours in the future, showing the stock's exact closing price. The act of receiving that information and then acting on it in the present creates a perfectly stable economic loop. The future price causes the present trade, which in turn causes that exact future price to manifest. It is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy, a bootstrap loop of financial certainty. This creates profound stability for any asset integrated into such a system. Wild swings and panic sells could become relics of a more primitive, linear age. If everyone knows with 100% certainty what an asset will be worth tomorrow, today's price simply adjusts to match it minus the cost of capital. The market becomes a smooth, predictable engine, its volatility replaced by temporal equilibrium. But this stability is a double-edged sword. It invites a new and bizarre form of crime, temporal fraud. Imagine a corrupt actor operating a black market temporal transmitter. They could send a falsified data stream to their past self, claiming an obscure company's stock will soar. Their past self invests heavily, driving the price up through the sheer volume of the investment, thus making the prediction come true. They then cash out, profiting from a lie they themselves authored from the future. This is a paradox-powered Ponzi scheme, a closed loop of deceptive information that fabricates its own truth. Or consider insider trading on a cosmic scale. A corporation with access to retrocausal channels could see its own future quarterly report, discover a catastrophic failure, and use that knowledge to quietly divest or short its own stock before the news breaks in the linear timeline. This is not just unfair, it violates the very causality that makes a market free. The need for regulation would be immediate and immense. We would require a Temporal Securities and Exchange Commission, an agency tasked with auditing causality itself. Their investigators would not just follow money trails, but time trails, looking for inconsistencies in data loops, hunting for the telltale seams of a fabricated future. They would certify temporal data streams, ensuring they originate from legitimate, verifiable future states and not from fraudulent bootstraps. The entire financial system would need to be rebuilt on protocols that distinguish between a coherent loop and a manipulative one. Beyond high finance, this would reshape every corner of commerce. Supply chain management would reach perfect efficiency. A shipping company would know with absolute precision about tomorrow's port delay or a warehouse fire, rerouting its containers today to avoid it entirely. The disaster never happens from its new, adjusted perspective, creating a stable timeline where the problem was always avoided. Insurance would transform from a gamble on risk into a fee for temporal stability maintenance. Premiums would be calculated not on probability, but on the cost of maintaining the data loops that prevent the insured disaster from ever entering reality. Even personal finance would change. You could receive a future bank statement, see a disastrous overdraft fee scheduled for next week, and deposit funds today to prevent it. Your future self, now in a stable financial loop, sends back a thank you note that is also its own cause. This economy runs on perfect information, but it raises a haunting question about progress. If we can constantly optimize away every crisis, every shortage, every market crash, do we lose the creative pressure that drives innovation? A perfect, stable loop is safe, but it is also a closed circle. The chaotic, wasteful, unpredictable linear economy has been the furnace of human invention for millennia. By removing the unknown, do we risk building a paradise without a future, merely an endless, efficient echo of a single perfected day? The retrocausal economy promises wealth beyond risk, but its ultimate cost may be the very uncertainty that makes us strive for something more. Your morning begins not with an alarm, but with a gentle chime from your temporal interface. It does not show you the weather forecast, it displays a stability metric, a percentage indicating how coherent your personal timeline has remained overnight. A high score means the choices you made yesterday are neatly aligning with the person you are becoming. A dip might suggest a conflict, a future regret, or a missed opportunity, sending ripples of unease backward. You check it with the same casual anxiety one might once have checked social media, a quiet pulse check from your own destiny. This is the daily rhythm of a retrocausal citizen living in a world that knows the future whispers. Education has been utterly transformed. Standardized tests are obsolete. Instead, students undergo temporal aptitude scans not to measure what they know, but to map the density of their future potentials. A child might show a strong resonance with future work in ecological engineering or symphonic composition, not as a prediction, but as an existing fact in their timeline's broader shape. Curriculum becomes less about filling a blank slate and more about tuning an instrument. Teachers are guides helping students harmonize with their own emerging futures, strengthening the paths that lead to fulfillment and gently detuning those that lead to dissonance. The pressure is profound but of a different kind. The anxiety of infinite choice is replaced by the weight of a revealed pattern. You are not afraid of failing, you are afraid of being out of sync, of fighting a current your future self has already chosen. Career planning is no longer a linear path but a process of discovery and alignment. You do not apply for a job, you audition for a role in your own life's consistent narrative. Companies use compatibility engines that analyze not just your resume, but your temporal signature, looking for candidates whose future successes create a feedback loop with the company's own projected growth. Getting the position feels less like an achievement and more like a recognition, a confirmation of something that was always weaving itself into being. This brings a strange liberation. The paralyzing question of "what should I do with my life?" softens into "how do I become who I already am?" The frantic hustle to create a future from nothing relaxes into a focused effort to cooperate with a future that is already reaching back to help. Your late nights studying, that extra project you volunteered for, are fueled not by vague hope, but by the tangible pull of a future self who is counting on that effort to exist. Relationships are the most deeply affected arena. Dating apps are replaced by resonance matching. You are not seeking someone compatible with your present self, but someone whose future timeline weaves seamlessly with your own, creating a stronger, more stable knot. Arguments take on a new dimension. A conflict might be flagged not just by hurt feelings, but by a dip in your shared stability metric, a sign that this disagreement, if unresolved, creates a fork in your path. The goal becomes not winning, but restoring coherence. The greatest challenge is authenticity. In a world where your future guides your past, when do you act from genuine desire, and when are you merely a passenger in your own life? The answer citizens learn is that in a self-consistent timeline, there is no difference. The desire you feel is the very mechanism of the future's influence. The love you have for a partner, the passion you have for your work, these are not illusions. They are the sensory language of a timeline communicating with itself. You are not a puppet, you are the conversation. The liberation is in the surrender to a story that includes your deepest joys. The pressure is in the responsibility to live up to the whispers of a potential you cannot yet fully see, knowing that every choice today is both a cause of tomorrow and a consequence of it. You go to sleep each night not wondering what tomorrow will bring, but listening for the faint, familiar echo of who you are becoming. The ultimate expression of this timeline harmony would be a medicine that treats not the present patient but their past self. Retrocausal medicine begins with a radical diagnostic tool, a scanner that does not image your body as it is, but reads the faint echoes of future illness as they ripple backward through time. A patient sits for a routine scan, and the device does not detect a tumor. It detects the future formation of a tumor, a malignant potential that has not yet coalesced into physical matter. It is a warning from a future you have not yet lived, caught decades before any conventional test could possibly sound the alarm. The treatment that follows is even more profound. Doctors would not prescribe a drug for you to take today. Instead, they would encode a corrective signal, a packet of biological information designed to instruct your own cells from years or even decades ago. This signal, sent via principles borrowed from quantum biology and temporal communication, would travel back to a key moment in your personal timeline, perhaps to the instant a single cell first began to misreplicate. The information would gently nudge that cell back onto a healthy path, or guide your immune system to recognize and eliminate the aberration before it could ever become a threat. From your perspective in the present, you would simply never develop the illness. One day you have a clean bill of health, and the next day, after the treatment is administered to your past, you still have a clean bill of health, but now with the deep knowledge that a terrible shadow has been erased from your future. The disease vanishes not from your body, but from your history, leaving no scar, no trauma, only the ghost of a tragedy that never was. This raises a profound question about identity. Are you still the same person if a defining struggle, a battle with cancer that shaped your resilience and perspective, is quietly deleted before it ever happened? Your strength forged in that fire would now have a different, unknown source. Your relationships, perhaps deepened by the vulnerability of illness, would rest on an alternate foundation. Retrocausal medicine does not just heal the body, it edits the biography of the self, trading a known, however painful, past for an uncharted, healthier one. And what of the natural arc of a life? Aging, decay, and ultimately death are the universal constants of a linear existence. If we can perpetually correct the errors in our biological code, sending wellness backward like a constant update, do we risk freezing ourselves in a single, extended moment? A life without the narrative of sickness and recovery is a life without certain kinds of wisdom. The very concept of natural progression unravels when the future is in dialogue with the past. We would become architects of our own biological narratives, choosing which potential paths to strengthen and which to prune, crafting a lifespan that is less a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and more a sustained, self-correcting pattern. The promise is a liberation from suffering, a triumph of will over biology. The cost is the authentic, unedited journey that made us who we are. Would you choose to erase your deepest valleys if it meant never knowing the strength it took to climb out of them? A masterpiece begins not with a blank canvas, but with its own echo. In a world where time is a conversation, the very act of creation undergoes a fundamental shift. The artist is no longer a solitary genius pulling form from the void, but a listener, a translator receiving signals from a work that already exists, just not yet here. Imagine a painter who wakes with a vivid, haunting image in her mind, a complete scene of colors and shadows she feels she has already seen. She spends months meticulously reproducing it, stroke by stroke, until the canvas matches her mental vision perfectly. Only later, in a gallery, does she learn of a lost painting from a century ago, recently rediscovered and restored, that is identical to her own. Did she copy it subconsciously, or did the future existence of her own work, needing a creator, send the inspiration backward to her, using the lost painting as a temporal relay? This is retrocausal art, where the source of inspiration is a closed loop, and the artist becomes both the origin and the discoverer of their own vision. New artistic genres would naturally emerge from this sensibility. Temporal collage, for instance, would involve assembling fragments not from the past but from potential futures. An artist might use a scanner that reads residual aesthetic impressions from an object's future states, capturing the ghost of a cracked vase or the patina of 100 years of weather on a new steel beam. The artwork is a snapshot of a thing's destiny presented in the present. Music could be composed in reverse. A composer starts with a finished, emotionally complex symphony as it exists in a future concert hall. Using software that unravels the harmonic progression backward, they deconstruct it into its simplest seed, a single note or a basic rhythm. The act of composition then becomes the process of following this reverse-engineered score forward, a journey of discovery where the destination is known but the path feels new. The line between creator and creation dissolves entirely. Is the artist making the art, or is the art from its future place of completion making the artist? It becomes a symbiotic relationship, a dance of mutual causation. The artwork needs the artist to physically manifest it, and the artist needs the artwork's future existence to provide the creative spark. This transforms the artist's role from a godlike creator to a vital participant, a necessary channel through which a timeless form enters our linear experience. The struggle of the blank page is replaced by the challenge of interpretation. How faithfully do you follow the whisper? Is there room for improvisation within the loop, or does straying from the vision break the coherence? This could lead to a new aesthetic of fidelity, where the artist's skill is measured by their ability to perfectly transcribe the future memory, a technician of destiny. Conversely, it might spawn a genre of deliberate dissonance where artists play with corrupted loops, creating works that are intentionally out of sync with their own inspirational echo to provoke a feeling of temporal unease. The value of art shifts from novelty to resonance. A painting is not judged by how new it feels, but by how deeply it harmonizes with its own causal loop, how perfectly it closes the circle. The most profound works would be those that feel inevitable, as if they always existed and were merely waiting to be found. This reframes our entire cultural history. How many of our great works are already part of such a loop? Did Mozart hear the completed requiem from his own future, transcribing it as it faded? The romantic notion of the tortured artist wresting form from chaos gives way to the image of the serene medium, calmly listening to a song that has always been singing itself. Archaeology's foundational rule is that the deeper you dig, the further back in time you go. But what if that rule is broken by a single, impossible object? A stratum of rock dated to the Cretaceous period holds not a fossilized bone, but a perfectly machined gear of an unknown alloy. A sealed tomb from ancient Egypt contains a clay tablet beside the sarcophagus, but the cuneiform etched into it describes principles of quantum entanglement. These are not just plot devices for science fiction, they are theoretical possibilities in a retrocausal universe called anachronistic artifacts. Such an object would be a physical message in a bottle, not from the past but from a future that, for reasons unknown, deposited a piece of itself into ancient ground. Finding one would not be a curiosity, it would be an intellectual detonation, shattering our linear narrative of human progress into irreparable fragments. The entire story we tell ourselves about civilization would unravel. Our timeline is a tidy arrow from stone tools to bronze, iron to silicon, each era building on the last. An anachronistic artifact cuts that arrow in half. It suggests advancement is not a slow, steady climb, but a loop, a spiral, or perhaps even a series of seeds planted deliberately long ago. Imagine excavating a Neanderthal burial site and finding, nestled beside the remains, a small, smooth disk that, when analyzed, emits a complex data stream in a binary code we can just barely decipher. The code contains a fragment of a mathematical theorem not developed until the 21st century. The immediate question is paralyzing. Did a future traveler lose it? Did a civilization far older and more advanced than we know collapse, leaving this one piece behind? Or, most disorienting of all, did human knowledge not develop linearly, but emerge fully formed at some point, with fragments of it slipping backward to inspire our earliest myths and technologies? Suddenly, the myth of Atlantis or the Vimana flying machines of ancient Indian texts stop being legends and become potential historical reports, garbled accounts of contact with these misplaced future objects. The impact on science would be even more profound. A future artifact is a puzzle with no context. Its material science would defy explanation, composed of elements or molecular structures unknown to our periodic table, forged under conditions we cannot replicate. Studying it would be like a medieval alchemist trying to reverse engineer a smartphone. They might grasp it as a container of light and sound, but the principles of semiconductors and programming would be utterly inaccessible. This object would represent a peak we cannot even see from our current foothill, a technology so advanced it appears as magic or worse, as nonsense. It would be a constant, humbling reminder that our understanding of physics and engineering is provincial, a local chapter in a much longer and stranger book. The very ground beneath our feet, the geological record we use as our clock, would become untrustworthy. If one layer is contaminated with the future, how can we be sure of any dating? The bedrock of history would turn to sand. This forces a radical rethink of what discovery even means. Every technological leap, from the invention of the wheel to the splitting of the atom, would have to be re-examined under a haunting new light. Was it genuine, independent innovation, or were we, perhaps subconsciously, following a blueprint left for us? The ancient Greek Antikythera mechanism, an astonishingly complex astronomical calculator found in a 2,000-year-old shipwreck, already baffles historians with its sophistication. In a retrocausal framework, one could entertain a terrifyingly beautiful thought. What if it is not an outlier of ancient genius, but a faded copy of a device that originated millennia later? Progress becomes less about invention and more about remembrance, a slow awakening to knowledge that has always been here, waiting in the soil for us to mature enough to find it. The archaeologist's trowel, then, is not just uncovering our past, but potentially our future. Each dig becomes a temporal excavation, searching not for where we have been, but for where we are going, and finding that the destination has been quietly waiting at the beginning all along. The soil of our past may already hold blueprints for our salvation. Among the most urgent applications of retrocausality is the fight against climate change, a crisis built on the irreversible consequences of past actions. What if the solution is not just ahead of us but also behind? Imagine a future civilization on the brink, its oceans acidified, its weather systems chaotic. In a final, desperate act, they perfect a method of temporal messaging. They do not send a letter, they send a data packet containing the complete schematics for fusion reactors that run on seawater, or the genetic code for a superorganism that can sequester carbon at an industrial scale. This information arrives not in a government lab, but as an anomaly in an old radio telescope archive, or etched into a pattern of tree rings that should not exist. It is a gift from a future that hopes to erase its own reason for being, a paradox of self-preservation through self-erasure. This idea carries a profound, aching hope. It suggests that our current struggle, which feels so lonely and linear, might actually be part of a larger loop where the future is fighting for its own existence by aiding us. Every breakthrough in renewable technology, every sudden political will to act, could be subtly influenced by whispers from a tomorrow that refuses to be extinguished. It reframes climate activism not as a plea into an uncaring void, but as a response to a call we have not yet consciously heard. The activist fighting today is, in this view, answering a distress signal from their own grandchildren. Yet, this same idea breeds a deep and paralyzing despair. It can become a narrative of absolution, a way to outsource our responsibility. If the solutions are coming from the future, then our present failures are not final. They are just placeholders until the real rescue arrives. We might grow passive, waiting for the temporal blueprint to download, rather than grinding out the hard, incremental work of change with the imperfect tools we have now. It risks turning science into a religion where we await a revelation from a more advanced version of ourselves instead of building that version through grit and innovation. Furthermore, the message itself might be tragically misunderstood or impossible to implement. The schematics from 1,000 years hence could be written in the language of physics we have not yet discovered, using materials that do not yet exist. It would be like handing a smartphone to a medieval blacksmith and asking him to replicate it. The gift could be right in front of us, utterly indecipherable, a monument to our own primitive moment in time. The narrative within climate activism already wrestles with these twin poles of hope and fatalism. The retrocausal lens sharpens them to a point. Are we the ancestors who finally listened to the screams from the future, or are we the ones who heard the whispers and chose to ignore them, dooming the senders to their fate and thus ensuring the message was never sent? This is the ultimate temporal paradox of our age. Our actions today will determine whether the future that can save us ever comes to exist, which in turn determines whether that future can reach back and guide us. We are both the cause and the potential effect, trapped in a loop where our courage is the only thing that can close the circle. The clean energy revolution we need might not be a discovery, but a memory of a tomorrow we are being begged to remember. That struggle to close the circle forces a confrontation with the deepest question of all, the nature of the self. If your future is whispering back, shaping the very person who receives the whisper, then who are you really? Your identity is no longer a simple story of a child who becomes an adult. It becomes a conversation stretched across decades where the adult you will be is already tutoring the child you were. This shatters our linear idea of personal growth. We think of maturity as a process of leaving our past selves behind, but in a retrocausal framework, your past self is constantly being updated by the person you are becoming. The shy teenager who practiced guitar alone in their room was not just building skill for a future. They were being pulled by the future musician who needed that specific foundation to exist. The choices feel free, the effort feels genuine, but they are also answers to a call from down the timeline. This makes the concept of regret twist into something strange. Regret is the pain of a past choice measured against a present understanding. But if your present understanding is in part a product of that very choice, then the regret is a loop, a self-created wound. You made a decision that led to suffering, and that suffering forged the wiser person who now looks back with regret. The regret is not an error, it is a necessary part of the person you are. In a sense, you cannot regret a choice without also regretting the person it made you, which is to regret your own existence. This does not erase the pain, but it reframes it as a structural element of your identity, a knot in the thread that is essential to the pattern. Self-improvement transforms under this light. It is not about fixing a broken past self from the vantage point of a superior present. It is about aligning your present actions with a future self who is already whole, sending back the calm and clarity you need to get there. The discipline to exercise, the patience to learn, the courage to apologize, these are not just you striving for a better tomorrow. They are you cooperating with a better tomorrow that is striving for you. You are not climbing a mountain to reach a peak, you are following a rope that the peak has thrown down to you. This view finds a home in the block universe theory of physics, where time is not a flowing river but a static landscape. Every moment from your birth to your last breath exists simultaneously like frames in a film reel. The feeling of moving from past to future is just our consciousness illuminating one frame at a time. In this block, your entire life is already written, a four-dimensional sculpture. The retrocausal whisper is not a signal traveling through time, but a feature of the sculpture's shape, a connection between the part labeled childhood and the part labeled adulthood. There is no becoming, only being. This can feel horrifyingly deterministic, like your life is a frozen insect in amber, but it can also feel profoundly peaceful. Your struggles are not mistakes, they are the necessary contours of a complete and finished self. Your moments of joy are eternal. The child you were is not gone, they are forever safe in their frame, and the elder you will be is already there, smiling at the memory you are living right now. So, who is the real you? You are not a single snapshot. You are the entire sculpture. The impatient youth, the weary adult, the content elder, all are equally real and all are in constant, timeless dialogue. The you that regrets a mistake and the you that learned from it are not two different people, one succeeding the other. They are two facets of a single, intricate gem, forever reflecting each other's light. Your identity is not a line, but a crystal, and every choice you make is not creating a new future, but discovering another glittering face of who you have always been. Every powerful technology casts a long shadow, and the ability to touch the past is no exception. The moment we accept retrocausality as a tool, we must also accept it as a weapon, creating a battlefield not across continents but across centuries. Temporal warfare would be the most subtle and devastating form of conflict ever conceived, fought not with bombs but with whispers. An attack would be invisible, its effects unfolding not in the present, but woven into the fabric of what we remember as history. Imagine a rival power sending a precisely calibrated signal back 50 years, targeting the construction of a critical dam. The message contains a minor engineering flaw, a miscalculation in the stress tolerance of a key support. In our timeline, the dam is built, stands for decades, and then catastrophically fails during a routine storm. The investigation finds the original design error a tragic accident. No enemy warships appeared, no missiles were fired, but a nation's infrastructure and morale are shattered by an attack that technically happened before the attacker was even born. Or consider a more personal, chilling strategy influencing the birth of key historical figures. An agent could target not a person, but a possibility, sending disruptive information to subtly alter the circumstances under which a future scientist, general, or political leader was conceived. The goal is not assassination but erasure, ensuring that a pivotal mind simply never enters the timeline, its absence creating a quieter, weaker future for the enemy. The victim would never know they were attacked, they would just never exist, and the world would be subtly poorer, never realizing what was lost. Defending against such an insidious threat demands a new kind of security, one focused on the integrity of time itself. This would give rise to temporal firewalls. These are not physical barriers, but vast, distributed networks of quantum sensors designed to detect anomalous retrocausal signals, ripples in causality that do not match the established historical data pattern. Think of it as an immune system for the timeline. When a foreign signal is detected, the firewall does not block it outright. That might be impossible. Instead, it generates a counterwave, a neutralizing echo that cancels out the invasive message before it can alter events. It is a constant, silent war of interference patterns happening beneath the surface of reality, with technicians monitoring causality screens for any blip of inconsistency. The most powerful defense, however, would be a doctrine of pure deterrence, chronological mutually assured destruction. If Nation A launches a retrocausal attack on Nation B's past, Nation B's automated systems would instantly retaliate not against A's present, but against its own past. They would send a message back to a pivotal moment in their enemy's history, perhaps to the founding of its first major city or the birth of its cultural identity. The result is a paradox so devastating it forces peace, a temporal standoff. If you sabotage my dam, I will unravel your civilization's origin. Both attacks would succeed, leaving two mutually incompatible timelines that cannot logically coexist. The universe, to avoid the paradox, might simply prevent the initial attack from being launched, or it might branch into a ruined timeline for both. The message is clear. Any retrocausal strike guarantees the total annihilation of both parties' coherent history. It makes war an act of temporal suicide. This creates a security landscape of unbearable tension. Every nation lives with the knowledge that its entire past is potentially vulnerable, that the bedrock of its culture could be silently edited by an enemy it is not formally at war with. Historians become the most critical intelligence officers, constantly auditing the past for signs of tampering, while children are taught not just their history, but the official version of it with warnings about temporal counter-narratives. Trust evaporates because any success, any failure, any natural disaster could be the work of a subtle hand from the future. The ultimate fear is not of invasion, but of insidious coherence, the terrifying possibility that your entire national story, your triumphs and tragedies, have been carefully crafted by a foreign power to produce a docile and predictable present. In such a world, the greatest act of patriotism might be to fiercely protect the messy, unedited truth of your own past, with all its flaws and glories, because that authentic, unweaponized history is the only thing that proves you are truly free. Your digital life is no longer a straight line from birth to present, but a living tapestry where every thread connects to every other. A retrocausal social network would fundamentally rewrite the story you tell about yourself online. Imagine scrolling through your profile, not chronologically but causally. That photo from a difficult, lonely period in your life is not just a memory. It is now annotated with a glowing comment from your future self, a message that reads, "This was the week you finally asked for help. I am so proud of you for starting." The like on that awkward teenage post comes not from a peer, but from the confident adult you become, a quiet affirmation that the phase was necessary. Your timeline becomes a dialogue across years, where moments of struggle are framed not as failures, but as essential plot points in a story that ends in strength. This technology could be a powerful antidote to regret. We all have those cringe-worthy posts, those photos from relationships that ended badly, those declarations of a dream we later abandoned. Normally, they sit there as embarrassing monuments to a past self we have outgrown. But on a retrocausal feed, that same post might be surrounded by contextual echoes from your future. The failed relationship post is linked to a later journal entry about the self-respect you learned. The abandoned dream is tagged with a picture of the new passion it accidentally led you to discover. Regret transforms into understanding because you are not just looking back with today's limited knowledge. You are seeing the event through the eyes of a future self who knows its full value in your life's mosaic. Your digital identity is no longer a curated highlight reel hiding the messy parts. It becomes an integrated whole where every experience has a confirmed purpose in the larger narrative. This could foster a profound, new form of self-compassion, as you literally see how your past pains were woven into your present peace. Yet, this constant conversation with your future self carries a dark potential for anxiety. What if, instead of a comforting comment, your future self leaves a critical note? You post a celebratory picture after accepting a new job, and a future annotation appears in red, a warning, "I wish I had negotiated the salary." This decision created 2 years of financial stress. Your present joy is instantly poisoned by a condemnation from a version of you who has already lived the consequences. Every major decision becomes a minefield as you wait for the future's verdict to appear. Will this college major be validated or mocked by my future self? Will this vacation photo one day be tagged with a sad face from a me who is grieving a lost loved one in the picture? The platform could morph into a relentless performance review where you are constantly being graded by your own harshest critic, a critic who has the unfair advantage of hindsight. This reshapes digital identity into a state of perpetual audition where you are not just presenting yourself to peers but to your own future judgment. The pressure to make the correct choice as defined by a future you cannot fully know could be paralyzing. It might encourage a bland, risk-averse life where you avoid any path that could potentially garner a future frown, thus stifling the very experiments and mistakes that lead to growth. Your online profile would no longer be a reflection of who you are, but a nervous negotiation with who you might become. The social dynamics of such a network would be bizarre and deeply revealing. You could visit a friend's profile and see not only their past, but how their future self feels about it. This creates a new layer of intimacy and a new source of social tension. You might see that a friend's future self has loved a post about a hobby they currently dismiss, revealing a hidden passion yet to bloom. Or, more uncomfortably, you might see that their future self has disputed a post where they praised you, hinting at a rift yet to come. Relationships are no longer built on shared pasts alone, but on partially revealed futures. This could forge incredibly strong bonds as you bear witness to the entire arc of a friend's struggle and triumph, or it could breed suspicion and distance as you constantly read between the lines of their temporal annotations. The very nature of support changes. Instead of just saying, "It will get better," you could literally show them the future post where they themselves declare that it did. But what if their future shows no such relief? The network could expose the raw, unfiltered trajectory of a person's pain, forcing us to sit with the uncomfortable truth that not every story has a happy ending, at least not on the timeline we can see. This forces a fundamental question about connection. Do we truly want to know the full shape of each other's lives, including the verdicts our future selves will pass on our present joys and sorrows? In seeking to close the loop of our own identity, we might find the weight of each other's timelines almost too heavy to hold. The blueprint for a temporal transmitter would demand materials that defy our current reality. Exotic matter is not just rare, it is matter that breaks the rules, possessing properties like negative mass or negative energy density. Picture a substance that, instead of being attracted by gravity, is repelled by it. You do not find this on the periodic table. You must engineer it, likely from the chaotic foam of spacetime itself at the quantum scale. This exotic matter is theorized to be the only thing capable of stabilizing a wormhole, keeping the throat of a time tunnel from pinching shut instantly. Without it, any gateway you create would collapse faster than light can travel through it, a useless flash of impossible geometry. But the exotic matter is just the sealant you still need to carve the tunnel. This requires manipulating quantum gravity, the holy grail of physics, a theory that would unify the vast cosmic rules of relativity with the probabilistic flicker of the quantum world. We currently have no such theory. To warp spacetime deliberately into a closed time-like curve, a path that loops back on itself, you need to command gravity at the subatomic level to twist the fabric of reality into a stable knot. It is like trying to knit with threads that only appear when you are not looking directly at them. The energy scale for this operation is almost beyond metaphor. You are not talking about the output of a nuclear power plant or even all the power plants on Earth. You are talking about stellar energies, the ability to harness and focus power on the scale of a star, perhaps to create a microscopic region of such intense, sculpted gravity that time itself ties into a loop. Even if you could summon the energy and craft the exotic materials, the device would be unimaginably delicate. A closed time-like curve is a mathematical abstraction that reality seems to resist. The moment you try to establish one, quantum effects or minute fluctuations could destroy its coherence. Your machine would need to exist in a state of perfect quantum isolation, shielded from any external vibration, any stray photon, any random cosmic ray that could crash the system. It would be the most sensitive instrument ever conceived, operating in a cryogenic, vacuum-sealed fortress, perhaps buried deep within a planet or floating in the void between stars. Then comes the control interface. How do you aim it? How do you dial a specific date? You are not programming coordinates in space, but in space-time. Your targeting system would need a complete map of the block universe, a four-dimensional address book for every moment in history. You would need to solve the problem of how to avoid sending your signal into empty space as the Earth moves, the solar system orbits, and the galaxy spins through the cosmos. Your temporal beacon must account for millennia of celestial motion, calculating not just where the receiver was, but where it will be in its own past light cone. This is navigation that makes interplanetary travel look like following a painted line on the ground. And finally, the ultimate engineering challenge is not construction but verification. How do you test it? You send a message back 1 minute, you wait. If you receive it, how can you ever be sure it was not just a random signal generated by your own machine in the present? You need a pre-agreed upon code, a complex key that only your future self could know. But if your future self knows it because your past self received it, you are back in a bootstrap loop where the origin of the information is the loop itself. Proving you have built a time machine might be logically impossible from inside the timeline it creates. So you are left building the most complex device imaginable, from theoretical materials with universe-bending energy to achieve an effect you can never definitively prove worked as intended. It is the ultimate leap of engineering faith, a cathedral built to a god whose existence you can only infer from the design of the blueprints you are holding, which might have come from the future construction of the very cathedral you are trying to build. The forest you walk through today might remember a future that no longer exists. This is the retrocausal ecosystem, a living world where the health of tomorrow's environment could be whispering instructions to the biology of the past. We have considered how this might work for human technology and medicine, but nature itself could be engaged in a vast, slow-motion dialogue across millennia. The implications stretch far beyond a single species, touching the very fabric of life on Earth. Could the future state of a rainforest, a coral reef, or a grassland be subtly guiding the evolutionary paths that led to its own existence? It is a dizzying thought that the complex web of life we see is not just a product of random mutation and natural selection, but also a response to its own destiny, a self-fulfilling prophecy written in DNA. In this framework, a species does not simply adapt to its present environment. It adapts to the environment it will one day help create. The deep roots of a tree that prevent erosion, the symbiotic relationship between a flower and a pollinator, even the migratory patterns of birds, all could be influenced by a future need for stability, diversity, and balance. The ecosystem is not just a snapshot, it is a loop where the effect becomes part of its own cause, ensuring resilience across time. This leads to one of the most ambitious and fraught applications imaginable: temporal rewilding. The goal is heartbreakingly simple: to send a message into the past to prevent an extinction. The passenger pigeon darkening the skies, the thylacine pacing its cage, the great auk on its rocky island, all lost to human action or neglect. What if we could intervene? The method would be exquisitely delicate. You would not send a living animal back in time. That would be a physical impossibility with our current understanding. Instead, you would send information, a perfect genetic blueprint of the species, perhaps accompanied by ecological data about the precise pressures it faced. This data packet would be aimed at a research station or a conservationist in the decades just before the species' final decline. The information would arrive as an anonymous, miraculous gift, providing the tools to enact a perfect conservation strategy, to establish protected reserves with ideal genetic diversity, to combat the specific disease or predator that was the true culprit. From our perspective in the present, the result would be a quiet miracle. One day, the history books and museums tell a story of loss. The next day, after the message is sent to the past, those same records tell a story of narrow salvation. The species never went extinct. It has always been here, a living part of the world, and only a few people with strange, fading memories recall a timeline where it was ever gone. But the ripple effects of such an act are unpredictable and terrifying. An ecosystem is a dance of unimaginable complexity. Reintroducing a single species, even one that was originally there, can have cascading consequences. Now amplify that by doing it across time, where the reintroduction happens not into a carefully managed modern reserve, but into the historical wild decades or centuries ago. The passenger pigeon returns in vast numbers. Does this alter the composition of North American forests, changing the seed dispersal patterns for certain trees? Does its massive population boom provide a new, abundant food source for predators, allowing their numbers to swell and subsequently pressure other prey species into decline? The thylacine is saved in Tasmania. Does its continued presence as an apex predator reshape the behavior and population of smaller marsupials, which in turn affects insect populations and plant growth? You are not editing a single entry in a ledger. You are dropping a stone into a pond of time and hoping the ripples outward and backward create a pattern you can live with. The goal is to restore balance, but the historical balance you are aiming for was a moment in a fluid, changing system. By forcing a specific outcome, you might be creating a new, equally fragile, or perhaps even more unstable equilibrium. The law of unintended consequences becomes a law of unintended causality, where your fix in the past creates a new problem in a future that then has to solve it, potentially creating another loop of intervention. This is the profound responsibility of temporal ecology. It asks us to think not in terms of fixing a single mistake, but of stewarding an entire causal web. Every extinct species is a torn thread in that web. Restoring it might repair the tear, or it might pull other threads out of alignment. The romantic vision of a pristine, pre-human wilderness is itself a snapshot, an arbitrary point in a continuum of change. By choosing which past to reinforce, we are not restoring nature to a natural state, we are designing it. We become architects of deep history, selecting which potential evolutionary branches to strengthen based on our future aesthetic or ethical desires for biodiversity. This is a power that carries deep humility. It suggests that conservation is not just about preserving what is left, but about participating in a conversation with what was and what could be again. The whisper from an ecologically rich future might not be a detailed blueprint, but a simple, urgent plea for more complexity, more connections, more life. And our task in the present is to listen for that whisper in the wind through the trees, in the silence where a bird's call should be, and to act in a way that makes that future not just possible but inevitable. The forest remembers, and it is hoping we will help it dream. The classroom of tomorrow has no textbooks, only resonance scanners. Education in a world where the future whispers is not about filling an empty vessel with facts from the past, but about tuning a receiver to the hum of a self-consistent timeline. The foundational skill becomes temporal literacy, the ability to interpret the faint signals echoing backward and integrate them into a coherent understanding of the present. Students are not taught what happened, but how to listen for what is happening across the entire span of their lives. They learn to distinguish between a genuine retrocausal nudge, a random mental fluctuation, and the more troubling possibility of a fabricated or corrupted loop. It is less like studying history and more like learning a new sensory language where intuition is a data stream and déjà vu is a potential lesson. The curriculum focuses on pattern recognition across time, emotional calibration to sense chronological dissonance, and the ethical frameworks for acting on information whose origin is a closed circle. The goal is to produce not scholars of a dead past but fluent conversationalists with a living future. This upends the entire premise of academic research. Why spend a lifetime laboring in a laboratory to discover a law of physics, when that law might simply be transmitted from a future that already knows it? The painstaking process of hypothesis, experiment, and peer review begins to look like a primitive form of remembering. In a retrocausal paradigm, breakthrough discoveries might not be invented but received. A research team could be working on a stubborn problem in quantum gravity, and one morning, a complete, elegant solution appears in their shared database with no record of who authored it. The equations are perfect, but their derivation is a mystery. The team's role shifts from pioneer to authenticator. Their work is to test the solution to see if it creates a stable, paradox-free loop with their own efforts. Did they, in some sense, send it to themselves? The Nobel Prize becomes a baffling artifact because true authorship dissolves in a bootstrap. The greatest minds are not those who create from nothing, but those who are most receptive, who can best translate the whispers of a finished symphony into the notes on a page. Consequently, the purpose of education transforms from knowledge acquisition to loop curation. A student's success is measured not by what they memorize, but by the coherence and richness of the personal timeline they are building. Projects are not about producing something new, but about strengthening a resonant connection between a future potential and a present action. A child showing an affinity for music might not simply practice scales. They might be guided to meditate on a feeling of future performance, to strengthen the causal thread that makes that performance inevitable. Field trips go to places of high temporal density like ancient sites or cutting-edge labs, not to learn facts but to experience the texture of deep time and feel the pull of possible futures. Failure is redefined. A poor grade does not mean you lack knowledge. It means your efforts are out of phase, creating dissonance with your own emerging path. The teacher's feedback might be, your approach to this problem is creating noise in your signal. Try listening for a quieter solution. This creates a strange new form of intellectual authority. The most revered figures are not the loudest geniuses, but the quietest harmonizers. They are the individuals whose personal timelines exhibit profound consistency and beauty, whose lives feel inevitable and right. They teach by example, demonstrating how to align choice with destiny without sacrificing authenticity. The anxiety of choosing a wrong path lessens but is replaced by the pressure of fidelity. Are you being true to the pattern you sense? Are you courageous enough to follow a whisper into a field of study that seems to have no present-day application, simply because your future self insists it is crucial? The entire emotional landscape of growing up changes. The angst of teenage identity crisis softens into a process of temporal discernment, of learning to recognize your own voice across the years. You are not searching for who you are learning to read the blueprint of who you have always been becoming. The classroom becomes a sanctuary for this most intimate of dialogues, a protected space where the conversation between your past, present, and future is not a confusing mystery, but the very subject you are there to master. This conversation with the future is not a new idea. It is perhaps the oldest story we have ever told. For millennia, the world's spiritual traditions have spoken of a reality where actions echo across time, where the future is not blank but woven with threads of meaning. Retrocausality might be the first scientific language we have to translate these ancient intuitions. Take karma, the principle that our actions ripple forward to shape our future experiences. The retrocausal lens offers a stunning inversion. What if our future state of peace or suffering is also reaching back, gently guiding the choices that lead to it? In this view, karma is not a linear scorecard but a self-consistent loop. The compassion you feel compelled to show today might be a quiet instruction from a future self who has already reaped its rewards, a future that needs that specific kindness in its past to exist. The loop closes not as punishment or reward, but as coherence, a life arranging its own moral symmetry across time. This reframes spiritual growth entirely. You are not building a better future from scratch. You are answering the call of a wholeness that already includes you. The same inversion applies to prophecy and visions. Across cultures, seers and mystics have reported glimpses of what is to come. If the future can whisper, then perhaps prophecy is not magic, but a form of temporal receptivity, a mind momentarily tuning into a particularly loud or emotionally charged signal from a tomorrow that is already real. The prophet does not see a possibility, but a fact, and their very act of reporting it becomes the event that ensures the future they witnessed comes to pass. Their vision is both the effect of that future and the cause of it, a perfect spiritual bootstrap paradox. Even our connection to ancestors takes on a new dimension. The idea that we are watched over or guided by those who came before us is a pillar of many traditions. Retrocausality flips the script in a beautiful way. What if we are the ones guiding them? Your life of purpose and integrity today could be the very thing that lends meaning and resolution to your ancestors' struggles, their sacrifices finally making sense when viewed from the vantage point of the future you are building. Your present becomes a gift to your past, healing generational wounds by fulfilling the hope that was always embedded in their hardship. This leads to the most personal and mysterious bridge, the power of prayer and intention. How could a prayer offered now affect an event that has already happened? The mechanistic answer from retrocausality is startlingly simple. The prayer is not sent forward into an uncertain future, but backward along the timeline to the moment of need. Your heartfelt intention for a loved one's recovery from an illness sent from the present could be received as a subtle nudge of resilience or a fortunate coincidence at the precise moment in the past when they fell ill. The healing was always part of the story, and your prayer was the echo of that future wellness, reminding the past of its own potential. This provides a radical framework for what we call synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. A book falls off a shelf, opening to the exact passage you needed to read. You think of a long-lost friend, and they call moments later. In a linear world, these are charming accidents. In a retrocausal world, they are the visible seams in a self-consistent timeline. Your future need for that specific wisdom caused the book to fall at that exact moment in your past. Your future conversation with your friend reached back and sparked the memory of them, preparing you for the call. The universe is not being random, it is being coherent, tying up loose ends across time to make sure the story holds together. This does not prove any specific religious doctrine, but it does something perhaps more profound. It suggests that the universe might be inherently meaningful. The feeling that things happen for a reason, that our lives are part of a larger pattern, could be a literal, physical truth. The science of retrocausality offers a scaffolding upon which our deepest spiritual experiences might rest, not as superstition, but as a natural human sensitivity to a conversation that flows in both directions through time. When you feel a sudden, unexplainable urge to act or experience a moment of profound connection that defies logic, you might not be tapping into the divine, but into the deeper structure of a cosmos where every moment is in dialogue with every other, where your soul is simply another word for your entire four-dimensional self, whispering to you from all directions at once. That profound sense of cosmic meaning brings us to a chilling and silent sky. The universe is unimaginably vast and ancient, with billions of planets that should be capable of fostering life. So where is everyone? This is the Fermi paradox, the haunting silence that contradicts our expectation of a galaxy buzzing with intelligence. One terrifying solution is the concept of a great filter, a developmental stage so perilous that it prevents nearly all civilizations from advancing to the stars. Could our pursuit of retrocausality be that filter? Is the mastery of time not a milestone but a trap? Think of it as the ultimate test of a species' wisdom. A civilization advances, unlocking the secrets of the atom, then genetics, then consciousness. Finally, it stands at the precipice of its greatest achievement, the ability to touch the fabric of time itself. This is the moment of supreme danger. With this power, a species might try to perfect its past, to erase every war, every mistake, every moment of suffering in a quest for a pristine, painless history. But in doing so, they could sterilize their own timeline. Innovation often springs from adversity, from the pressure of crisis and the lessons of failure. A civilization that retroactively removes all its struggles might also remove the very friction that forged its resilience, its creativity, its drive to reach beyond its planet. They could create a perfectly stable, perfectly safe, and perfectly stagnant loop, a paradise with no desire to ever leave its garden. They filter themselves out of the cosmic story by choosing comfort over growth, becoming a beautiful, timeless echo that never whispers to the stars. The filter could be far more immediate and violent, however. A species might develop the technology before developing the profound ethical and logical frameworks to handle it. Imagine a young, fractious civilization, still divided by ancient rivalries, suddenly gaining the power to wage war across centuries. A single act of temporal sabotage, a paradox weapon used in a fit of anger or fear, could unravel the attacker's own history in a feedback loop of erasure. The civilization simply ceases to have ever existed, its planets left empty, its ruins never built. The galaxy might be littered with such ghost worlds, planets that show all the signs of being habitable, yet are devoid of any fossil record of intelligent life because that life retroactively deleted its own origin. The silence we hear isn't an absence of life, but the echo of its self-inflicted amnesia. Our own moment in history places us directly before this potential filter. We are theorizing, experimenting, and telling stories about retrocausality now, long before we have the power to enact it. This period of contemplation might be the most critical phase of all. It is our chance to map the ethical minefield, to imagine every possible paradox, to build the cultural and philosophical immune systems before the disease ever exists. We are writing the safety manual for a machine we haven't invented yet. This gives us a unique and fragile opportunity. Perhaps the civilizations that survive the filter are not the ones who develop the technology fastest, but the ones who think about it the longest and deepest, who weave its implications into their myths and laws for generations before the first prototype is ever powered on. The development of retrocausal technology, then, becomes the ultimate measure of a civilization's maturity. It asks not just if we are smart enough to build it, but if we are wise enough not to use it foolishly and courageous enough to use it wisely. Can we resist the temptation to erase our scars, knowing they shaped our strength? Can we handle the power to edit history without becoming tyrants over our own past? Our answers will determine whether we pass through the filter and join a cosmic community of time-aware beings, or whether we become another quiet lesson in the darkness, a warning to others about the price of touching time before you are ready. The great silence may be the sound of every other civilization failing that exact test. This journey has taken us from the flicker of a single photon to the silent expanse of the galaxy. We have seen how a simple particle might whisper to its own past, and how that whisper could echo through history, technology, and the very core of who we are. Retrocausality is not just a strange idea in a physics journal, it is a direct challenge to the story we tell ourselves about reality. It asks us to consider that time is not a river carrying us helplessly forward, but a landscape we are standing upon, where every point is equally real and in constant conversation. Our choices, our regrets, our sudden intuitions, and our deepest spiritual feelings might all be threads in a tapestry woven from both ends at once. The future is not a blank page waiting to be written. It may be a voice already speaking, guiding the hand that holds the pen. This means your life is not a straight line from birth to death. It is a complex, shimmering shape, a four-dimensional sculpture where your past is being gently shaped by the person you are becoming. The promotion you worked for, the chance meeting that changed everything, the gut feeling you could not explain, these are not random events in a linear chain. They might be the visible evidence of a life in dialogue with itself, a story ensuring its own coherence across decades. So what do we do with this idea? We let it change how we see the world. The next time you face a difficult decision, pause and listen. That quiet pull you feel might not just be fear or desire. It could be the faintest echo of a future self, one who has already lived through the consequences and is hoping you choose the path that leads to them. The next time you look back with regret, wonder if that painful moment was not a mistake, but a necessary turn in a road that leads to the strength you have today. You are not a passive passenger in time. You are an active participant in a story so intricate, its beginning and ending are in constant conversation. This is the profound invitation of retrocausality, to see your own life as part of a larger, non-linear narrative where every moment is connected to every other, and the future is not somewhere out there but is already here, whispering in the choices you make right now. If you want to keep exploring these edges of tomorrow's truths today, make sure you are subscribed. The conversation is just beginning, and the next idea might just change everything you think you know.